Okay, thank you very much. My name is Gerard. The topic is putting into practice what can be done to support civil society in promoting better governance. Before I go into that, I would like to thank Matteo Roa, who was here yesterday and who taught me something. I think the point of us being together is not so much trying to score brownie points and being smarter than your neighbor. I think, at least my objective to be here was to learn new things. And she was the first person, I think, I met in almost 6 years, who said, we Maori, we are not civil society. I.e., I reject the entire categorization, all the schemes that you, Paki, have made. I'm not business, I'm not state, I'm not civil society. We are a iwi. And that puzzled me for 3 or 4 hours. It really put me on the wrong footing and said, how can somebody be not one of my categories? So I thank her genuinely for that, and I hope that's something we can all take home when we leave here. Coming to that, one short story about definitions and concepts. I said it was about 6 years ago that I had the last experience of somebody denying something. That was an experience I had in Mozambique. I was having a beer with the tax collector in the village in Mozambique, and I was doing research, and as I was white and I was a researcher, this man thought he knows it all. So we were having 2 beers and 3 beers, and he said, I have something to ask you, Gerard. And he became almost intimate. Can you tell me what civil society is? I thought, well, that's good, I get off the hook, I can do that. So I explained to him what I thought the civil society was. And then after me blubbing on for 10 minutes, he looked at me and said, I understand. You know what, when the Arabs came to Mozambique, they called us the natives. Then the Portuguese came and they called us the blacks. And then the Europeans came and they called us the Moors. And then Frelimo came to power, and all of a sudden we were the people. And now the donors come in and we are civil society. So this man perfectly understood the game of labeling. His name was Mr. Muripa, just to make sure that we acknowledge the source of our information. What I would like to do with you is share in 4 or 5 points some of the findings that came across an evaluation in which I participated early this year. The Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs evaluated 10 years of its programs in Africa on good governance. I was part of a large team that went to 3 countries, Ghana, Mali, and Tanzania, and we discussed with government agents, with NGOs, and donor representatives about what had happened in the last 10 years in terms of promoting good governance. I will pick a few cherries that relate to civil society and good governance. I will share those with you. I don't know whether they're relevant because they are typically based on African experience, and as Michael Edwards said earlier, that is a very peculiar context. Highly donor dependency, highly donor dependent. All of these countries depend between 30 and 50% of their national budget depends from donor funds. So if the donor whistles a tune, you bet that the government will dance. And if you talk about civil society, if the donors whistle a tune, you bet that they dance very hard because they depend for 100% on donor funding. So this whole issue of donor dependency is woven throughout the lessons I'm going to share with you. The first then is about definitions. We started off yesterday with discussing the definition of what is civil society, and that puzzled me. So I think the question for this whole workshop was how to promote better governance. The goal is governance promotion, better governance. Civil society is just a means to achieve that. Donors do not fund, as far as I know, civil society for the sake of civil society. It is, at least taking from my experience, principally a means to an end. A very important means, but the objective is, as the question for this seminar, what can be done to support civil society to promote better governance? That's the ultimate goal. So I think we should be worried less about what is the definition of civil society, as it is a tool, as well we should be worried about what is governance. And when I started to look into that, I really got concerned. Does anybody know here what definitions of good governance we use? Has anybody heard of the Kaufman indicators? One or two. So we're all here having a workshop, and we don't know how many kgs per square centimeter of governance we are trying to promote. Or is it kiloliters per hour?
Maybe the World Bank of this.
Yes, the World Bank has an answer to that. I would strongly recommend that you all go to the World Bank's website. They're brilliant, and there's a leaflet called A Decade of Measuring the Quality of Governance. And it says, it is a fallacy to think that the quality of governance cannot be measured. Full stop. It can. Full stop. We do it. It is not funny. This is very serious, because they do it. Countries are assessed on a score from -100 to +100. If you look at the website, you will find that the scoring of these Kaufman indicators is done on the basis of different sources. They go about 35 different sources, 21 indicators. It's a very complex process. I took about 2 weekends to figure out how they do it. It's all about economics, and I will share a few things with you. When they talk about the 6 basics of good governance, we're talking about voice and accountability. That means freedom of press, i.e. a capitalist ownership of the press. It's not about how many radio stations we have, it's about do we have diversity in the owners of the press. It's political stability. That means can we have a shop here without people ransacking the shop? It's about government effectiveness as the third one. It's about the quality of government services to the business sector. It's about rule of law. Specifically, can contracts be enforced? Can thieves be apprehended and are they punished? And it's about control of corruption. What is missing in this definition of governance?
Civil society.
Well, everything except business.
I wouldn't do it. Sorry?
Everything except business.
Exactly. What is missing is poverty, equality, inequality. It's not there. So we are all having a conference here, and I presume very few of us are neoliberals, and we're trying to sort out how can civil society support the promotion of capitalism in the world. Because that's what it is. Good governance in terms of the World Bank is about promoting the business model, opening up markets for business. It's about culture. Transparency International goes and says, look, it's about addressing the complicated issues of traditional authorities and modern states. Maybe traditional authorities are not very accountable. Maybe they're even corrupt. So Transparency International, and I'm exaggerating, I'll probably get all the flack for that, I know. It's about modernization. It's about the values of the modern world that are going to be spread. It's about media. I'm trying to be a bit provocative here. So media, we have to have media. We have to read. Now what do we read? CNN? The BBC?
No.
Do indigenous peoples have the same access to the media? They probably don't. And so what I'm saying is governance is very much geared towards neoliberal issues. Okay. Measuring governance, one other important change that took place and very few people noticed. We have the Rome Declaration and the Paris Declaration. The world has changed since the Paris Declaration. We should all start developing a speech impediment. Paris Declaration. Paris Declaration. If you go and have conversation with donor agencies, Paris Declaration. This word will pop up every other 10 minutes. Paris Declaration. It does. You'd be surprised. You go interview these people, Paris Declaration. It comes back and forth all the time. We will always have Paris, as the Romantics said. This is about something very serious. What has happened before and after? When you measure governance, the quality of governance, before 2004, 2005, donor agencies had, every one of them had their own ways to measure progress towards better or poorer governance in a country. It is what I would call is a domestic comparative perspective. You would look whether the governance in a country has improved or declined as compared to the same country 3, 5 or 10 years ago. It's about a group of people, a nation developing itself. What happened after the Paris Declaration? We have changed all that. We have introduced the Kaufman indicators, and now we are no longer comparing countries to their own development record, but to other nations. It's now an international competitive system. So it's no longer whether a country like Ghana has improved on its justice system. It is about how the Ghanaian justice system compares to the one in Mali, PNG, or Vanuatu. Again, what does this suggest? It's about the globalization trend. It's about informing businesses where to best invest your money. We have lost the domestic competitive perspective and introduced the international competitive perspective. We have been robbed and we didn't even notice it. Maybe we don't miss it, I don't know. Okay. 4 points then of the things that I find very striking in this evaluation. The first one, what happened, and the introduction is not so relevant for civil society, but the conclusion is. This is a situation we had up until 2003 or 4. A cluster of donors operating in a country, pretty uncoordinated, not harmonized, right? This is what we have now. Most donor agencies have merged almost. I will not go into the details, but there is a lead agent that will speak for all of them. I'm exaggerating a little bit, not too much. It means that diversity in donor approaches is gone. But, hallelujah, we have a coordinated approach. It means for the recipient country that the opportunity to play off one donor against the other is out of the window. The good news is that China is in desperate need of resources and ignores all this donor harmonization, and many African countries are making good deals with China. And that is worrying for the donors. So the first cracks in this harmonization approach is not coming from the donors, it's coming from the Chinese. So I think many local nations should thank the Chinese for breaking up that cartel. Okay, it gets worse. We talk about this PSP process, we've done that quite often. I think what we saw in our research is that the Ministry of Finance has become the key player, the key voice of government. It's no longer the Ministry of Health or Education, it's the Ministry of Finance. Do we know what that stands for? No, clean bookkeeping. Department of Administration and Finance. I don't know in the Pacific, but in most African countries, the Ministry of Finance seconds officials to the sector ministries, to health, education, roads, and so on. These are government officials that belong to finance, but temporarily are a staff member of the health ministry. 3 years from now, they are in education. They don't know really about education or health. They are the bookkeepers. Now, what are bookkeepers?
Bean counters.
Bean counters. But they are very powerful. I'll come to that shortly. So the Ministry of Education, as an example here, is controlled by the Ministry of Finance via this Department of Administration and Finance. The provincial departments of education are out of the scheme, and the school, I was being kind, I put it still on a map. Then, some of the other actors we have here, we have the classic controlling countervailing powers, Parliament, the Auditor General, the media maybe, and the NGOs. I wrote NGOs, not CSOs. I'll come to that shortly. All the communication is largely between this harmonized donor group and the Ministry of Finance about development planning. If talks are held at a lower level, it is with the ministries Department of Administration and Finance. So we have finance people talking education, health policies with the donors, and they do. They set the agenda, they determine the targets, and so on. A thinner line, less communication, is there between the donors and the sector specialists, somebody who actually knows something about education. Then donors talk to NGOs, they talk to the media, very thin lines, and to Parliament. What is striking in this picture, if we talk about governance? There's something missing.
There's no
Nobody's talking
no
about what's important.
government,
What else?
no cabinet,
Judiciary.
no
Tony wins the prize of the day as far as I'm concerned. There's no communication between national actors. They all talk to the donors. If you remove the donors from this picture, is there any dialogue left? There isn't. That's frightening, isn't it? The stunning thing, we had 90 interviews. Not once I have heard a government official use the word ownership. Not once. I talked for dozens, probably hundreds of hours. I did not record it one single time. The word for the government officials was partnership. Partnership, partnership, Paris. Partnership, partnership, Paris, right? If you talk to the donors, it's about ownership and Paris. There's a problem brewing here. I'll leave it to you to think about the potential problems here. The only thing that is for, and now I move to the importance for NGOs, they do hold a contact with the sectoral ministries because most NGOs have a sectoral focus. They, as a person, also originate often from sectoral ministries. The problem is getting on the wrong horse. Now I start making some suggestions for NGOs. By talking to sectoral ministries, you're talking to the persons who are not making decisions. I.e., you're wasting your time. Then there is the rest of society. The problem is it's hardly related to the other actors, and donors talk to them either. This is a pretty dysfunctional family as far as I'm concerned. I have no idea how to solve the problem, but there is a problem brewing. Last point as a suggestion for the NGOs. Most of the discussions between donors and the Ministry of Finance are about indicators. And this has reached Kafkaesque levels. I just quote from one example, no countries mentioned, no sectors mentioned. The donors have agreed to fund a particular country's budget on the condition that in 2006, 30.07% of the national budget is spent on sector education, for example. In 2007, 13.12. Next year, 13.17. Year after that, 13.22. 0.0 and then something changed. Great progress, right? Ambitious, isn't it? This is brilliant. This is really going for it. No, of course not. The problem then is that, aside from the measuring and all the figures, it's all make-believe. There's a big smoke screen, we're doing something, but in actual fact, very little is happening. But everybody signs off on the thing. The opportunity for NGOs, and that's my final remark, is maybe, and that's a dangerous thing to say because somebody mentioned earlier we should have more of a civil society culture in business. I tend to think you could also take a more business approach still to civil society. It's about markets, it's about niches, it's about getting access to funding, as many of the NGOs representatives have indicated. Where is your niche as an NGO? We used to think it was in a theme, in a sector, where AIDS, orphans, women, press freedom, you name it. We are focused on a theme. My bet would be that the next opportunity for NGOs is not in the sector, it is in monitoring and evaluation. All talk between the Ministry of Finance and the donors is about indicators. Indicators, Paris, indicators, Paris, indicators, Paris, indicators. There's a lot of Paris indicators in here. Donors do not trust in the Paris Declaration. They said they would, but they don't. The monitoring and measuring systems of the government. They mistrust government. If I was a civil society organization and I wanted to leverage on the government, I would expose government's lies. And donors want to hear them, because donors need a stick to beat the government. You can play an active role in the political game between donors and the Ministry of Finance. And that will put you in the middle of the battle. If you focus on your topical, your thematic issue, my prediction would be you go the way of the dodo. I'm being very blunt. I'm just trying to get a point across. Probably in reality it's not as blunt as I'm saying now, but I hope I make a point. Thank you.